So we'll start the action with our triple threat King of the Ring finals. Brody King versus Ricochet versus Evan Bourne. Over the past few weeks, Evan Bourne has tried to talk Ricochet into working together to take out Brody King, but Ricochet was hesitant to work together. We'll see how this goes as the big man enters the arena, and all three men will battle to become the first TWFC King of the Ring winner. So in the early going of the match, it was Brody King dropping Ricochet with the big boot and then clotheslining Evan Bourne. Brody King would remain in control as he would hit a monstrous senton on both men. But it didn't end there. The big man would remain in control, pinning both opponents into the corner with big splashes. It would seem the big man was running away with things. But a headlock would prove to be a costly mistake, as a double backdrop would provide just the opportunity needed for these two to realize that maybe working together was the best option. Double drop kicking Brody King out of the ring, and that is when Ricochet decided maybe we do work together just for a second. Ricochet would dive out of the ring, landing on Brody King, and that would be followed up with Evan Bourne nailing a monster springboard shooting star press that would also take out the big man. And once again, they decided our job here is done. Let's get in the ring and settle this alone. So with the big man cleared, it was Evan Bourne and Ricochet left in the ring. A beautiful Northern Light suplex. Ricochet would roll into his patented brainbuster, would plant Evan Bourne in the middle of the ring. Later on, Evan Bourne would pick up the momentum as you would see the back and forth. A poison Rana from Evan Bourne seemed like it would be enough to get him the King of the Ring when Brody King came back with the big boot, and the big man took control from there. A choke slam out of the ring to Evan Bourne, followed up by the big man's sit-down powerbomb, and that would be enough for the 1, 2, 3 as Brody King becomes the first TWFC King of the Ring. It was a hell of a run for Ricochet and Evan Bourne, but they were no match for Big Brody King, who would place the crown on his head, and he will go down in history as the very first. What does this mean for the rest of the roster, and will we see any of these men in tonight's 30-man Royal Rumble? We'll have to wait and see, but a tag team battle royal was next, and the last team standing would get a shot at FTR's tag titles at WrestleMania. Now, this was a long contest, but we got the highlights. The final four teams, Matt Hardy and Ortiz, go over the top rope. Jon Moxley would get Pentagon and Santana over the top rope while they were fighting on the outside. Later on, Danielson working on Phoenix, Jeff Hardy on Moxley. Moxley dumps him and they both go, and Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson were the final two as the reigning tag team champions FTR come out to have a stare down with the two most successful members of the Blackpool Combat Club, Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson. That is going to be a hell of a tag team title match. FTR possibly the greatest tag team of this era, but Moxley and Danielson, two of the most successful single stars of the modern era. That is going to be interesting. And we head to the much anticipated Intercontinental Championship Anything Goes match. Darby Allin challenging the champion, Kevin Owens. As Darby would make his way to the ring, there was only one thing on his mind. He went straight under and started just pouring steel chairs into the ring, and it's all legal. Anything goes. That was Kevin Owens' stipulation. As the Intercontinental Champion would make his way to the ring, seemingly not even worried about his challenger, posing for the camera, talking a little trash, and Darby darts out of the ring out of nowhere. Ladies and gentlemen, this was one of the best matches we've had so far in TWFC, and these are the highlights. Darby Allin would get a chair and open up on the champion. Just as momentum started going the challenger's way, he would set a chair in between the turnbuckles, and a big low blow would give Kevin Owens the momentum back as he would run Darby right into the chair in the corner. But we're just getting started. As you would see later, the Intercontinental Champion would be picking Darby up, seemingly looking for a suplex, when the challenger would open up with the left hand and reverse it into a beautifully timed sunset flip that would plant the Intercontinental Champion. But as I said, this was one of the best matches. It was back and forth all night. Look at this suplex right onto the chairs. You would think the Intercontinental Champion would have it won right there. And you would be wrong, because 1, 2, and the challenger would get the shoulder up. We didn't know then, but we were just getting started. Kevin Owens was going to the top rope, looking for a swanton dive as Darby moved and Kevin Owens crashes through the chair on the ring apron. Later on in the contest, it was Darby looking for a suplex and he could not get the champion up, and Kevin Owens would step over and deliver one of his beautiful suplexes right through both of the chairs, leaving both men down. This match was absolutely crazy, ladies and gentlemen. The champion would eventually recover and go for the pin, but Darby would once again get the shoulder up as Kevin Owens could not believe it. Looking for something on the apron, Darby would reverse it and Owens would be sitting in a chair and Darby would launch his body, sending both men to the outside, and once again, champion and challenger down for the count. That's when Darby would find his way to the top rope and nail the coffin drop. And we would have a new No! The champion would get the shoulder up. Darby can't believe it. He would set up a pile of chairs and another low blow would provide just the opening needed for the Intercontinental Champion to deliver a massive powerbomb into the pile of chairs, and the 1, 2, 3. Kevin Owens beats Darby Allin and is still the TWFC Intercontinental Champion. What an all-out war that was. Kevin Owens will walk into WrestleMania as the Intercontinental Champion. And that would lead us to the big TWFC Championship match where the champion Gunther would defend against The Undertaker. This was a heavily anticipated TWFC Championship match, and it was vintage Undertaker. That's right, the dead man would return as the lights would go out and the lights would start to flicker. The lights would go out again and come back, and the lights were dimmed. The mood was set. Everything was in place for the legend to return. The dead man from Death Valley was in the building. What an iconic entrance for The Undertaker, as he would look to be the man to pry the TWFC Championship away from the champion Gunther. What an eerie feeling as the Druids held torches, the lights, the pageantry, everything that is an Undertaker entrance, as the dead man would raise his arms and the lights would come on in the arena. You could feel it in the atmosphere that this was going to be a heavyweight battle when the champion, accompanied by his manager Paul Heyman, would enter. A big fight feel for sure here in this TWFC Championship match, and we were just getting underway as these two giants would stare each other down with the biggest prize in professional wrestling in between them. Gunther versus The Undertaker. Only one can walk away and head into TWFC's first WrestleMania. And it would pick right up with The Undertaker twisting the arm, and you already know he's looking for the old school, but Gunther would reverse it into a big power slam. From there, Gunther would stay on the offensive with a heavy spine buster, planting the dead man down in the ring. He would look for a choke later, but that was the opening Taker needed to go complete vintage dead man, coming off the ropes with the heavy big boot that would have the champion reeling. Later on the outside, Undertaker would have him positioned for another vintage moment when he would drop the big leg drop on the apron. From there, we would head into the ring with the big choke slam, but Gunther would get out with the big chop, followed by another heavy chop to the dead man. The champion was back in control when the dead man would grab his throat and hit a monstrous choke slam right in the center of the ring. That's where Taker would drop the straps and business would start to pick up as he would look to hit Gunther with his patented tombstone power driver, but Gunther would reverse it into a chokehold, and that would take so much out of the dead man. This lasted for a few minutes before he could reverse it, and Taker would reverse it into the tombstone. But the damage had been done. Both men were down. Taker could not go for the pin after nailing that tombstone. The championship match would continue as the dead man would look for the last ride. He would plant the champion in the middle of the ring, and that could do it, and Gunther would push out at the last second. Paul Heyman couldn't believe how close that was. The dead man was making it clear this one was over when Gunther would chop his way out of it, and he would grab the dead man and deliver a masterful powerbomb of his own. As the champion would reach over for the pin, the dead man would lock in Hell's Gate, and there was nowhere for the champion to go. He was fading in and out. This was gonna be it. When the ref would count his shoulders down, we couldn't believe it, but during Hell's Gate, Taker's shoulders were to the mat. The ref was just doing his job, and a costly mistake. Undertaker would raise hell, but the ref was just doing his job. What a turn of events, but the dead man would stare at the TWFC champion as if to say, you didn't win, you just survived, and I think the TWFC champion knows that. Nonetheless, he's going to the first ever TWFC WrestleMania, and ladies and gentlemen, coming up next will be the full-length 30-man Royal Rumble match to determine who will face Gunther at TWFC's very first WrestleMania.